Okay, I'm Sue Wilson from Bedford Health. I want to talk to you about my business because it's kind of complicated what I do. People often don't get what I do because the range of services I provide are pretty wide, and so that gives me a few minutes to explain to you what I do. So I'm going to start out by asking you to do something really random. When you put your arm out, keep it out there and hold on to that. Okay, and that's all you need to do for the time being. Right, so Bedford Health. These are some of the things that I do. First of all, psychotherapy. It's what most people will think I do, and that's what I tell everyone I do. This is for long-term deep traumas. We're looking at 12, 15, sometimes up to 20 weeks, dealing with something that often with issues from the past, something that's caused a person a problem for a long, long time. So an emotional issue. Maybe they've got phobias, depression, anxiety, but it's been going on for a long, long time. This is the biggest therapy that I do, and it takes the longest time. But it's a small part of my business, so I'm going to move on. Hypnotherapy. This is what most people grab hold of. Whenever I tell them I'm a hypnotherapist, they're just really into it and they want to know all about it. Basically, hypnotherapy is me talking to you when you're in a relaxed state. That's all it is. In that relaxed state, your subconscious mind is a little more accessible, and I'm offering it a way of thinking differently, and that's all I do. Actually, there's a lot more technically involved in that, but that's essentially. If you have psychotherapy training, then I can help you adjust what you think. This works very much for short-term issues and habits. So I get a lot of people coming in at this time of year for fear of flying. They usually come a few days before they're about to fly and they're in a real panic. I get people coming in who are doing driving tests. I do an awful lot of driving test work with people. One session, sorted. I get a lot of people come in who are about to do something that's unusual, maybe give a speech at a wedding. These are all short-term issues when I haven't got a lot of time to work with someone, so I can overcome that issue for a short period of time. But hypnotherapy wears off. People don't understand that. They think it's going to change what they think and what they do long-term. Very rarely, unless I was with you for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I'd prefer to do something different in that case, because we can look at a long-term solution. Cognitive stimulation therapy. As you know, I work with people with dementia, and people with mild to moderate dementia. We can't stop dementia, it's a progressive disease, but we can slow it down, and we can help that person retain some of their cognitive abilities for a little bit longer. And the people I work with, their carers and family will tell me afterwards that they are so much more in tune and in the room, if you like, with them for days afterwards. And this is, again, the psychotherapy comes in there because I get to understand the person, their likes, their dislikes, their background, and I can also help people with their environment and make sure the environment suits them. And the biggest therapy that I do, cognitive behavioural therapy and applied psychology. Okay, so the first thing this works for is unhelpful thinking, behavioural problems and habits. So someone who has low self-esteem, for example, who has social anxiety. Social anxiety is not being friends, it's actually feeling that you're being judged. And a lot of people have this issue. We all do to a certain degree because it's what keeps the world moving around, so we don't tread on people and aren't nasty to them generally. But in this one also with thinking problems, it can be random thoughts that pop into someone's head. It can be a long-term concern that they're just mulling over and over again. It could be things like sleep deprivation because they're not allowing themselves to switch off at night time. Anxiety and depression. This is the bulk of what I deal with. Anxiety and depression covers pretty much everything that I've spoken of beforehand in terms of the symptoms that will come from it. You're going to find people whose life is being affected on a day-to-day basis because they are not having the life they could have, doing the things they could do, being the person they could be. And so what happens is that they restrict their life. Their life becomes smaller. They live within what they can deal with, and that's pretty much it. So their life will become smaller, they will do less and less, day on day, week on week, year on year. And the final bit that I deal with, fears and phobias. This can be, I can use hypnotherapy for this, as I said, for things like fear of flying, but that will be a short-term fix generally. For a longer-term fix, we would be looking at applied psychology for that. And applied psychology is basically a training course. It's not even therapy, it's a training course. It's me chatting with someone, usually over a coffee. Sometimes they bring their sandwiches in if they're hungry. It's very personal. It is us chatting one-to-one. Sometimes it's even funny. We do have a laugh because, as you know, I have got a bit of a dark sense of humour, and I tend to bring that to the therapy because it makes people feel a lot more comfortable, but more importantly, they remember. And in this one, I do a lot of drawing on flip charts. I can't draw. And that actually helps as well because people remember the drawings. I've had people come back years afterwards and say, oh, I still remember you doing that. And that's really helpful. So they're the therapies that I do. I'm going to go back to the Relaxed Living program. As I said, it's the biggest therapy that I do. This is the training course. And basically the way I work is that the idea that we have a thought, that turns into an emotion, and then we have a response to it. So the thought could be, I'm going to do a presentation. The feeling is then, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. The response is, vocal cords tighten up, body tightens up, they forget what they're going to say, they get nervous about what people are thinking, hence you have a poor presentation. Okay. Right. I'm going to talk to you about, I spoke a few weeks ago about how what you think and what you rehearse can affect what you do. So I'll talk to you about the Disney version. And the Disney version is because we are basically animals. We came back, if you think back to when we were cave people, we couldn't ignore our imagination. Our imagination what sets us aside from the other animals. So if you think there's a saber-toothed tiger outside, then you can't go back to sleep. You've either got to go at the door or the hole in the wall and see what it is, or sit there with your spear until the thing comes in through the door. And that's what we do now. Our brain is developed in a way that actually we still listen to our imagination way more than our logic. So our imagination is there saying that in this presentation they're all going to laugh at me. Our logic comes in and says, no, I've done this many times before, I shall be absolutely fine. So what I teach people to do to go way over here and use your imagination in completely the opposite direction and imagine the Disney version. In the Disney version you can have flying fairies and flashing lights, rainbows. I did this with a child last week. I did work with a lot of children, with all age groups, but at the moment a lot of children. And she had a fear of school. And what I've got her doing is imagine her maths teacher in particular, who she has a fear of. He's a little stern by the looks of it, not nasty, just stern. And what we've got him doing is we've got him dressed up like Mary Poppins. And she's imagining him singing and dancing. And when you do that kind of thing, what you do is you take your mind away from the reality and you imagine the best case scenario plus and plus. And when you do that, your mind can just shift away from the negative rehearsal, move away from the logic even, and move across to what the possibilities are. It makes you feel a lot happier in yourself. It makes you feel more relaxed. And more importantly, you're imagining a different scenario. Finally, I'm going to come back to Edward. How's your arm feeling now, Edward?
Quite painful.
Yeah? That's all right. You can put it down now. Okay, this is a pine cone. It weighs very, very little. The point here is, when you're holding something and it's a small thought, a small fear, a small worry, for a short period of time, it's fine. I can hold that. That's not a problem. But when you're holding it for a long time, even the smallest thing gets heavier and heavier. And that's what I do with people who have had issues, sometimes for a few weeks, often for years. The longest term I've dealt with a lady who had a phobia which had lasted 45 years. We dealt with that really successfully. One of my favourite clients ever, because of how much she turned around. She was in her 80s, She'd been on antidepressants 40 odd years, is now not on antidepressants and is living a much, much fuller life. So that's what I do. Sue Wilson, Bedford Health, think, feel, do better.